What's going on, guys? This is Ed Reviews. You may notice quite a few different things with this video. We have a guest.
Hello.
This is Mike. Yes. We're going to be talking about Life is Strange Before the Storm. And just so you guys know, what my plan is going to be for this series is that I'm going to do one formal review when the series is over, all the episodes have been out, and I've played through all of them. And to supplement as we go on, I'm going to be filming these discussion installments with this guy right here.
Little mini-series for you guys.
Yeah, it's a fun little mini-series. And you may be asking, why is he here? We both have different perspectives on Life is Strange, is the best way I'd say to put it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I played the game in 2015 when it initially came out, and I reviewed it on my original blog, edreviews.blogspot.com.
Shameless self-promotion there.
A little bit.
I like it.
A little bit.
I like
I mean, the link's in the YouTube description too. But, and at the time, I had given just about every episode a 5 out of 5, and it was my game of the year in 2015. I have since replayed it, and I don't agree with my past self, if you will. I still love the series, and yeah, I love it. It's one of my favorite franchises currently. And I was kind of not excited about this when it first got announced. I was like, yay, more Life is Strange. But then it was about Chloe, no Max at all, no time travel. And I was skeptical. And I'm just going to kind of let him explain his thoughts on Life is Strange, how he got into it, and what he thinks.
As for me, the only reason I got into it is because on the PlayStation Plus, a free game of the month, Life is Strange was one of them. So I'm like, whatever. And then Eddie decided to play it with me over our party. So we started playing, and honestly, right away I noticed there was a bunch of flaws, and I personally didn't really like it. But I could see there's a lot of potential there. But as Eddie knows, I was kind of screaming.
Hates this game.
I was so mad.
He says that he thinks there's potential. He hates this game.
Just
The first
real quick,
game.
Spoilers for the first game, probably just throughout this video. We're going to make nods to the first game and anything like that. So my biggest problem with the first game was the ending just took away all player choice. Either you kill Chloe and everything gets destroyed, or you save Arcadia Bay and nothing matters. So that was, I kind of blew Eddie's ear off when that happened.
He did.
So I apologize for that.
He
Probably
did.
getting you tinnitus.
he really did.
But as for the prequel, I was skeptical like Eddie, but when I heard there was no time travel, meaning there was a sense of permanence to your choices, which we'll talk about that more in like our actual discussion, I was a bit hopeful for it actually. I don't like Chloe like Eddie here, but well, you'll see our thoughts on it in a little bit. So
yeah, let's get going. What we're gonna do first is kind of discuss our overall thoughts on this first episode, Awake, without going into spoilers, and we will tell you when we get into spoilers. And I'm actually gonna let you lead this. What were your overall thoughts, like in 5 minutes or less? What did you think about the game?
well, right away it starts out with a desynced audio of a lighter flicking, which made me very concerned because in the first game there was a point where just no lip syncing was there at all, no audio sync. But it did get better throughout the game. They did clean up their act. The voice actor for Chloe, we mentioned while we were playing, didn't really make it her own, which is sort of a good and a bad thing. She was mimicking, and I think she did a pretty alright job actually mimicking Chloe.
Yeah, I think it was an alright mimic, and not to get in the way of your initial thoughts, but it's kind of a good first talking point, is the fact that I get that, obviously, I think, if I remember what I read correctly, Ashley Birch, the original voice of Chloe, wanted to do it, but they were in the middle of like a union. Did you read this at all? It was like a union strike.
Mm-hmm. But she did help
She
the new
consulted.
voice actor.
She was a consultant on the production of this. And while I agree that like it's good that she did that, I worry that Ashley Birch just said, just do like a younger me, and that's it.
Victoria's and Nathan's, I'm pretty sure were the only two that came back.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, I'm sure you in the comments below will be like, no, they didn't come back.
Some of them I were a fan of, but honestly, most of them, i.e. Joyce and David, they just sounded bland, and however forced the emotion was in the first game, I was missing some of the character. Like, David's voice, at least for me, was a bit too soft and not as demanding as he was, and Joyce was missing some of that country-style mom that some of us loved in the first game.
Yeah, he loved Joyce in the first game. I could take it or leave it. It just kind of, she just kind of is a character. The thing when you talk about this game to the last game is that, admittedly, Joyce doesn't play a big role in the first game. I don't think you would disagree with me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because again, the first game is Max's story, and so obviously Chloe, depending on your perspective, is a very important part of Max's life. I think she's an abusive bitch.
That's $1 for the swear.
We got our first swear. But. So you could argue that Joyce doesn't play. He just liked, because Joyce is Joyce is a nice character.
She contrasted David enough where,
yeah,
I think it was not healthy is the word I'm looking for, but it was a nice sort of contrast.
Yeah, I agree. So, and I see where he's coming from on the fact that the voice actor is different. I didn't like that. I especially did not like the change in David's voice, because the thing is, he is supposed to be, as a character. And I don't think we're giving away spoilers, we're just talking about David as a person. As a character, he's this gruff military veteran that, like, he's supposed to be like, I've seen some shit, man. Like, and you, yeah. And he's supposed to be much more intense. And I thought that the new actor just kind of went for like that. He played it more like a. I don't know if this will make sense to you or anybody. More like a father. More like the calm
just a strict father.
Yeah, and
he's much more less of a drill sergeant.
And that's not his character.
No.
I really don't think.
Mm-hmm. Especially back before he grew a character in the first game.
And then one of the few voice actors we actually praised to kind of wrap up voice acting was the new voice of Rachel Amber.
Yes.
Or the voice of Rachel. We never actually had a voice for Rachel Amber in the first one. And
she was dead as hell.
Like, she was very much dead. So, and the thing is, I think we both just agree on this. Like, it's exactly what we both kind of imagined that voice would be like, having never got a chance to interact with Rachel Amber in the first game. And I think that's kind of it on the voices, that we didn't have any too much. We both thought that Victoria came back, but if I remember, I didn't really like the new voice, right? Is that
I think you didn't like the new character.
Yeah, I didn't like the character, and I think the voice was like a little too high-pitched, almost, you know?
But I pointed out that she's sort of a sophomore freshman, I'm assuming, Victoria, which makes sense, because if you see a lot of people's transition from freshman to senior, sometimes it can be a big stretch.
Yeah, so and the character design I wasn't too much of a fan of, but I understood, like, when he pointed out, like, oh, they're just trying to, remember, this is earlier, they're trying to make them a lot younger.
3 years, if I remember correctly.
It's been 3 years. It's 3 years before the events of the first game. And then, without spoilers, I think the only other stuff we can really talk about is kind of like the overall, like, user interface. I think he and I both agreed on this. I think I was the one who initially pointed it out, was that I felt that the user interface of the game as a whole looked far too much like the first Life is Strange.
Yeah, except for the phone. I really don't know what the phone interface did. It was very clunky and odd.
For those of you who didn't play the first game, there's a not even a mechanic, would you say? A feature? A feature in the pause menu, not even the pause menu, like the objectives menu, if you will, where you can look at the character's phone, and like throughout the game there'll be text messages that they'll get from certain people. And actually in the first game there was a clever scene where she's hallucinating, and like all of the people who were dead were texting Max. I think that was funny, at least in the first game.
Life is hallucinations.
Yes, that too. And other than the fact that like the physical interface looks different of that phone, it's a beat for beat copy, I would say, of the first game.
Which is like, a little nitpicky, I guess, but
it's nitpicky,
it's what we do.
Like, this is a review channel. What do you expect? Because you have the journal where she kind of like discusses what's going on, and I I read the journal. Did you read the journal at the beginning of the
I was more
episode?
exploring a little more of like the environment.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, did we ever get a sense that Chloe? I know she does graffiti, but before in the first game, did we get a sense that she was more of an artistic person?
I don't.
Did
really
she
think
draw
so.
a lot?
I don't think so. I don't remember that.
I
actually you brought this up after we finished the episode. By the way, we played this yesterday. We're shooting it. We played it on a Friday. We're shooting it on a Saturday. We've had kind of about 24 hours actually to let it
sink in.
Let it sink in.
Write the notes that you.
Yeah,
see.
that you see us shamelessly looking at, and no, I don't remember that. So the drawings were weird, but like just going back to the whole beat for beat user interface, you have the journal where you get to see like a moderately well written like what's going on in Chloe's mind, and it was the same purpose in the first game for seeing what Max thought on a day-to-day basis, what was going through her mind on a day-to-day basis, and then you have like a little section that describes each character that you've met and like a written description, which we're gonna get when we go into spoilers. I have a serious thought about one of the character descriptions, but that's a little tease to keep you going. Stay tuned. And it was I just wasn't a fan of the fact that it was a beat for beat copy. I think like try and do your own thing. I get that this is a prequel, they're trying to keep it in the universe, keep it grounded, but at the same time, be original.
Yeah.
Is kind of the thing that I thought initially. So we'll just give it now, just because we're gonna be getting into the spoilers now of like how the game plays and what the plot is. So if you haven't played it, I know we're a couple of weeks past the launch, but if you still haven't played it and you want to, end the video now. And if you don't care or you've played it, we're gonna get going.
Alright.
So, where do you want to go with this first? Like,
let's just start with presentation. I said this right off the bat. I think I like the art style personally better in Before the Storm because it just looks smoother to me. All the animations, all of the textures, pictures that you look at still look kind of haunted. But
I think I made this point to him. I made this point to him when we were doing it like that. That's just them being like, hey, the first game we had this weird like oil painting for the pictures thing, and I think they just wanted to keep that consistent. The one thing to point out, the first game didn't run in the Unity engine, right?
I don't believe so.
So this Before the Storm runs in the video game industry engine.
The video game industry.
It does run in the video game industry, but it runs in the engine Unity, which is like the only thing the game I can like for some reason think of that I played that had the Unity engine was Fusion Fall from CartoonNetwork.com. But like I think the Assassin's Creed games run in Unity, right?
I believe some of
them did, and then some of the Arkham games ran in Unity.
I learned a little bit about Unity when I took an animation and gaming class. So.
Yeah, it's a well-known, and I think it worked better.
Yeah,
I think we both agreed that like it definitely worked better. It felt like more of it just felt cleaner. The word I say, like, this feels a lot cleaner than the first game. And I know the first game was trying to go for almost an air of cheapness.
Sort of.
Telltale with just a hint of just a general air of cheapness. I think at least. So it makes sense. So it was nice to see them clean it up a little bit. And that's one of the things I definitely praised about this over the first game was that it looked visually nicer. We talked about the audio in the pre-spoilers thing. And so mechanic-wise, the simplest one to talk about is, so you remember how in Life is Strange 1, L2 was rewind time? Yeah, so obviously no time travel as we mentioned at the beginning. The replacement doesn't make sense.
This will make sense in a second, trust me.
So, I remember I found this by accident before it actually was even shown. Even like in the tutorial part of the game that it was even shown.
While I was sitting at a fire in the game, he told me about this.
I accidentally pressed L2. And I saw her raise her hand for a second. I didn't read what was on it, and I was like, wait a minute, what? Then I pressed L2, and I see that on Chloe's hand in the game is whatever written on her hand is whatever objective she has.
Also, that's shown in cutscenes, so that makes me fear that it's canon. And
Like it's consistent. Like, in credit to them for being consistent.
Yeah.
But I was sitting there like, what did I say? At what point was I like, this doesn't make sense because like, in 2 seconds she's erasing her hand and then rewriting. I think it was a little bit later on.
Yeah, I think that was during the scene where they're trying to fish a quarter out of a broken viewfinder.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into a problem with a couple of problems with that scenes later.
We'll get into that, but like, I pointed out like, wait, I mean, I know suspension of disbelief because it's a video game,
obviously.
But at the same time, like, what does she do? If it's in pen, it's like, because you can't write on yourself with pencil.
Wash it off.
Believe me, like, does she just carry Purell just to be like...
I think what would have worked better, instead of just like nitpicking and saying we have a problem with this, I'm gonna offer a sort of solution. Instead of like bring up your hand, bring up a little like side menu of an overlay.
Yeah,
that
like how Until Dawn did this.
Yeah.
Until Dawn did that, where just you had to press, I think it was R1.
Yeah, and
then it just brought up like, hey, here's your objective. And they're like writing excuse. I remember I was laughing my ass off when that happened because it was just like, because I think it literally like, just to explain it, she just goes like, I have a hard time focusing, so I write everything on my hand. And I was like, well, you explained it.
So does that change in 3 years?
Like, does it change in 3 years? Because at no point in
the first game
do you ever see, and granted, you don't play as Chloe, and she doesn't play as much of a role. But it was a very weird mechanic. My sister was listening to me play it, and I don't know if you heard her say this.
Yeah.
But she was just like, I mean, it's kind of clever, because like, they're building the fact that she's not a focused person. But I wasn't a fan.
It wasn't executed well.
It wasn't executed well, but like, it's small. It's just like, L2 does that.
Yeah.
And the other big mechanic before we kind of get into plots is the replacement, if you will, for time travel. And he's a big fan of this, and he made a good comparison, so I'll let him explain it, and then I'll give my thoughts.
So the big concept in the first game was time travel. You could rewind, make another choice, unlock new dialogue trees. In this game, instead, Chloe has this ability, I guess, called backtalk, which means in a certain dialogue option, you can choose to have sort of an insult competition with your adversary. Say, well, in one case, you can argue with David in the beginning of the game, and the bouncer in the beginning of the game as well. And that's the first time you're introduced to it. The bouncer won't let you into, what is it called, Firewalk?
Well, the Firewalk is the band play. It's like a ratty club, but it's an 18-plus club, and she's clearly 16, so like...
So she presents the bouncer with a fake ID. He's like, no,
doesn't work.
Can't do, so...
Like, cute try, but I think that's literally the line is like, oh, you're cute, aren't you? You a little fakey?
And then you get an option to backtalk him. I'm just going to call him the opponent, even though that's a little more melodramatic than
that's
it needs to be. But I don't really have a better word for it.
It works.
Your opponent, be it whoever's pissing you off at that exact moment, would say a line to you, and you would have to take a specific word or phrase from that line and try to compare it to one of the dialogue options.
It's comebacks. And I think it's supposed to be like, oh, she's trying to weasel her way out of a situation or into a situation in the case of the bouncer.
Which makes a lot of sense for Chloe's character because she's all about rebellion and anarchy and not listening to authority figures. So basically, you have to win. I think the standard is about 3 altercations, but it depends on the
depends on who it is. I think
with the Principal Wells, he needs to win 2 of those 2 of the dialogue options, and for I believe it's one of the other ones, they only need to win 1. So it can be stressful, but it also makes the player focus more on the dialogue and become more interested in it, which I think is a brilliant mechanic.
I agree with him. We both really liked that mechanic. I think it's a good alternative to time travel, because obviously it wouldn't make sense to give Chloe time travel.
However,
he noticed, he found something that he's not a fan of. I didn't need it, so I didn't think of it. He had just tested. I don't even think he really used it other than to prove your point.
It was more in the pause menu. I think they added this.
Yeah.
A restart checkpoint button, which
like restart a scene.
Yes, if you're in a cutscene, it'll restart to the beginning of the cutscene. But as some of you may know, in Life is Strange, there's dialogue choices in cutscenes. So if you make a choice that you don't like, guess what? Restart cutscene. And that, in my mind, just sort of ruins the entire point of not having time travel.
Yeah, and I agree with him. I don't know if someone's gonna notice it the way he and I had noticed.
I know it's not the main point of it. Like, it's not encouraging you to do that. It's more of an exploit, really. But
yeah,
it's still there, and it's kind of nitpicky, but
yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, it is. I agree. So I think that's it on like gameplay. Where you had some problems with the camera. If you want to get into that a little bit,
the camera. And I don't know if anyone else had problems with this, seems a bit...
I think I did a little bit.
For instance, if you ever played a game where it had a character on ice, you would have to stop a little more, and it would have momentum, and you would have to stop it. The camera works the same way. If you pull the camera to the right, and you let go of it, it'll keep going for a little bit. And also has a bit of lag to it. And in a game that requires exploration, which we can talk about a little more too...
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true. Because exploration kind of like is in that line between the plot and the.
Yeah, and in a game that requires exploration using your surroundings, a laggy camera isn't the best thing. It just causes more problems than it does not.
Yeah. A good example of a game that also had different kind of troubles, but just to compare, was if anybody. I'm dating myself here. Super Mario Galaxy 1 had similar camera problems. Like, not the same concept, but especially in the ice skating scenes in that game. Like, that's exactly what he's talking about, is that idea of like going forward, but then you have to pull back and then it'll still go. And the camera I had some problems with the camera too, not as much as you.
It wasn't a huge problem. I just noticed it. And it's like
it's not designed as well. It doesn't look. And the camera is also in the same perspective as the first game. And the first game didn't have any camera problems, did it?
I don't think it had definitely not as heavy as a momentum as that.
And then obviously different game engines, as we mentioned. So obviously the rule break,
different developers too.
Yeah, different developers, different engines. So like, I mean, you know more about game design than I do. You have to build the rules for how logic works.
Yeah.
And so obviously it might not translate in the way that it did in the first game. And so before we go into like plot stuff, you had a little bit to say about in comparison to the first game, the concepts of exploration.
Do you want to just go with it?
Yeah. So I'm gonna let him roll with that and just kind of show where I'll let him, like we just did, explain his thoughts, and then I'll kind of say what I said as a response. Go ahead.
As for exploration, in the first game, it encouraged it. It would help you a lot, especially with the Kate suicide scene.
Yes.
If you would explore her room a lot, it would unlock a lot of dialogue options. It could help her step down.
By the way, one of the most I felt in the first game, it was one of the most like unintentionally fucked up things in a video game.
But it was also really powerful.
It was like it was making the point that like in episode 2. Other than a certain scene that won't be mentioned, is one of my favorite episodes of the first game, solely because of the power of the Kate scene. We're getting a little off track, but I'll just... The fact that I was just like, oh yeah, Kate's sweet. She's not having any... She would never think of suicide. And then you have to... Then it's presenting you with stuff that you had to look at in her... You had to read deeper. And that's one of the few moments where I think the first Life is Strange really hammered life.
That was my favorite scene out of that game.
Honestly, it's both of ours. It's both of ours. And the metaphor, metaphor is not the right word to use. Like, you know what? Like the parallel to actual life, where it's like even if you think that a person is okay, they might not be okay. And being like, you had to read into the situation to save her. And in episode 2, I think was amazing.
Yep.
So, but
back to exploration.
Back to exploration. But we had talked about this when we finished the game, so it's a good thing to bring it.
Of course.
Because, and also we are comparing the two. So I think that was...
It is a prequel, and it is developed by Deck 9, I believe.
Deck 9 is the developer
of
Square Enix's back as publisher.
But back to exploration. I believe in Before the Storm, it is more rewarded. I.e., when Chloe shows up at Blackwell Academy, instead of just going right to the chemistry class that she needs to go to, you can explore a little bit. And Eddie did this, so I'll let him talk about it when I just introduce it. You can walk over to a table, and I believe her name is Stephanie, needs to give you a DVD.
Yes.
But when you do that, another option comes up, and I'll let you take it from there. This is the most memey thing out of this game, I swear.
This was the funniest thing. So, I was just like, I had went, and we took different paths in the scene going into Blackwell before your class. And one of the things that Stephanie asked you to do is they're like, oh, you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And they're like, wait, what is it? It's something like, oh, you wouldn't be into this?
And they kind of alluded to the fact that Chloe wouldn't be into that, but they asked her anyways at a nice
Yes. And she's like, I think the line is something along the lines of actually like, fuck yeah, dude, that sounds awesome. So one of the things that we both agreed on, just as a nice addition, before we go into, you know what, that's even better. Before we go into the meat of the plot, is the fact that the new side characters are more pleasant, is kind of what we were saying, and a bit more fleshed out.
More fleshed out, i.e., we were talking about, I say i.e. a lot, I apologize, but in the first game, it was more archetypal, I pointed out while we were playing. There was Max is the wallflower, Chloe's the punk, Nathan's the druggie, there's jocks, Victoria's the popular queen of the school. Now that Rachel's dead. Insert air horn here. But in this game, characters, you really like Samantha.
Yeah, like one of the examples I made, and she has all of a 5-minute scene, but I'm already like, yeah, dude. And I compared her to Kate from the first game.
Sort of a mix of Kate and Max a little bit.
From just the fact that she's a nice person. Like, she's the cute little mousy freshman who's like, yeah, stick up for people, woohoo! Like, and it's just like, in that 5 minutes, I'm like, best character. Like, this is so, like, she's nice, she's good, but we didn't have an issue with anybody, was the whole point. Is that they were all really good characters, and it's better than the first game in that respect, because it's just like, he's looking at me like, oh my god, how dare you, like, he's looking at me because, like, better than the first. Parts of Before the Storm are better than the first game. I will say it now.
Overall, Before the Storm is, and we'll get to this when we reach our final points, it's making steps in the right direction.
Yes.
To be a better game.
Yes. So, yeah, side characters, we love them. They're a lot more realistic.
So let's go into Blackwell.
Let's go into the actual meat of the story once you go into Blackwell, because the introduction is really the tutorial. The whole bar scene into Blackwell is reintroducing you or introducing you for the first time to the Life is Strange core mechanics.
Spoiler alert, you never make it to chemistry class. That's not a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Instead, Rachel comes over to you and grabs you and brings you to the drama department, where they kind of do a little on-the-nose thing. And do you want to explain that, or do you want me to?
Well, so one of the things that we had said overall, because we didn't actually make this point, this is one of the things. One of the points that we had made while the thing wasn't filming was the fact that neither of us know exactly what that is, and without getting into the side of what scene it was, about halfway through the game, I metaphorically turned to him and said, you know, Mike, there is no point. Like, do we have a plot? I asked, do we have a plot?
And I was sort of like, I think, being that all the thumbnails have both Rachel and Chloe, that it's going to be their connection, instead of our theorized, before this even came out, Chloe's transition to innocent girl to punk. And it's not that, and honestly, I think I probably would prefer that a little more, the souring of her.
Yeah, like, because when the game starts, she's already just unpleasant.
So
she's already in
personality development.
She's already on the marijuanas.
Yes.
And, like, we were almost disappointed, but like...
There's no central conflict.
Yeah, there is no...
Unless you want to count, Rachel and Chloe have a fight, which we'll get into, and that's the climax of the episode, their argument.
Yeah. And, like, so we think that it might just be... Because I feel like I'm making this point a third time now. I had said when we first finished the game, we were just kind of doing our initial thoughts. I had said, like... Oh, crap, what did
I don't know what you said.
Oh, my God.
Why don't you tell? I do know what you said, but...
Was it... I had said... Oh, yeah, I remember now. The first game had a central plot from the first episode.
The storm.
The storm, there's a gigantic storm coming in 5 days and Chloe keeps dying. Figure out why the two are connected. And obviously it would go into, like, you hear that stuff about Jefferson and the dark room and this, that, but even the Jefferson thing is almost a subplot in the first game.
Which, well, this is a very side point, but each episode kind of had a different thing going on.
But so this one, like, but regardless, the overarching plot was consistent.
And this 3-episode series
doesn't seem to have a plot after the first episode.
It's just, I think I'm right in the fact that it's going to build more on, like, Rachel and Chloe's relationship, and then her dying and probably how that, or her dying or going missing, and probably Chloe having to deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that part's going to come in the 3rd episode.
Yeah, we're thinking that, like, maybe they're going to have Rachel's disappearance in the 3rd, but that's going to... Remember how I said, though, that means that they're going to do a lot of time jumping.
We're thinking probably 3 years.
They're going to cover in this series the 3 years before the events of the first season, the first game, if you will.
Well, while we're on that, let's just dive into it and go.
You know what? Yeah, let's just do it and say this game doesn't know how to take itself seriously.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
For instance...
So, the first example I gave was... It's early on. It's the scene where David is taking Chloe to school, right?
And he holds out... Well, first off, he holds out a fist bump when they're talking.
Yeah, there's a whole... In the back talk and all that. Yeah. But, so, she falls asleep because she's just hungover from the concert. And... There's a dream sequence where she's in the car, which she wasn't in the original game. She wasn't in the car the day that William died. And it's just like, oh, I love this song. Like, there's like a country song, and like it tries to develop something. And then an 18-wheeler just rams the side of the car. And
that really shouldn't be funny, but in video games, I think we're kind of cultured.
In video games, it's funny, and I had made a very strange comparison. If any of you watched The Nostalgia Critic and remember the Wicker Man review, the scene that keeps tormenting Nicolas Cage in the Wicker Man, where it's like the truck just keeps hitting the little girl, and he makes the point that it's following her. It almost felt like that in just the sense of it was like me, and so that was the first thing. And I had said. In that moment, I think we both paused, and I had said, that didn't feel, like, regardless of there are moments where this game doesn't take itself seriously, I think this one was more of, it didn't feel earned. There's a scene, after they've skipped past the train scene, #more train, anyway, that you're going to people watch. The first few you find it doesn't work. She said she can get the coin back because you only have 1 quarter.
So you do fast quest.
You go fast quest, compare it to bottles. And anyway, so the whole pivotal point of that scene is as you're looking, you see seemingly at that point just 2 random people making out by an oak tree. But Rachel suddenly gets pissed, and there's a whole point where like she suddenly starts behaving erratically and differently. Even Chloe points out that
takes a heart attack.
Yeah, a whole bunch of very, very crazy stuff.
So they go to a junkyard.
The junkyard from the first game. Very important. Now let's slow down here because this is pivotal to the thing.
This is the climax of the episode.
This is the climax of the episode. You're in the junkyard, and she's pissed, and Chloe's trying to be like. She's trying to help. She's trying to be a good friend. And Rachel's just like, no, leave me alone. Leave me the fuck alone. Not everything's about you. And they have a genuine, like, I don't want to say beautiful argument, but like...
It's very developmental.
It's very developed where they're arguing about, like, and Chloe's really worried because you can tell that she has she has a connection with Rachel. And they're arguing. And the big pivotal choice there, which is one of the most, I think...
Rachel screams, what do you think this is? And then stop.
Then you stop, the classic Life is Strange, stop to make a decision of calling it a friendship or more than a friendship. We both said more than a friendship because we thought that's what it's pointing to. And then she just leaves like, I just can't do this right now. And you get a very beautifully done scene of Chloe's rage, where you get to go through the junkyard, smashing everything. Yeah, hit everything, including William's car.
Second dream sequence.
William
is Chloe's conscious and pointing out things that she's not acknowledging but understands, such as it was a lover's quarrel. She really cares for Rachel.
Yes.
The symbolic items around, like, the mannequin head that represented Rachel that Chloe hit is there. A poster about a guy she's into is there.
Yeah, and so, like, powerful scene. We're making a point. Powerful scene. And give them credit, right? Not credit where credit's due. They start seeing, as they're going along, they see Rachel Amber
by the oak tree.
And they pull up beside her. And I don't know if it was bad editing or what the hell happened here, or like just a lack of an idea. It's like she touches the window.
Unblinking
eyes, like, and then just spontaneously catches on fire. And like, we've talked about the symbolism, him and I, at length.
And we'll talk about them more when we do our, more of our final thoughts.
And hopefully the final thoughts will be longer-ish, but we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to take. A lot of this is going to come down to the editor. Anyway, so, catches on fire. We're both laughing our asses off.
It's not so subtle foreshadowing, but we didn't know that at first.
We didn't know it, because you'll see what we mean in a second, but like, and still, it doesn't really work, other than like, maybe it's foreshadowing the fact that happens.
I think it would have been better if they just had her blinking, first of all, and just touching the glass, showing that she's still there.
Yeah, but she's on fire, and then the truck hits again.
We forgot to do one more thing. Before she enters the dream sequence, there's a really powerful scene where she sees William's car. You, the player, have to punch the car, and she breaks down crying, and that's how she enters the dream sequence.
Yes, very powerful. Very, like, we both loved it.
And then after she wakes from the dream sequence,
we think it just kind of jumps straight to the
park, straight to the park, where those two
under the oak, and so, and there's it's. This, I don't think it's as powerful as the argument.
No. And for the reason we'll stay near the ending. This is the end of the episode. This is the last
This is the last part of the episode, and we will do our final, And so, they're going through, and we learned that the person, the male you saw of the two people making out was Rachel's father, and he's having an affair
with
whoever it is.
Sundress lady smoking a cigarette.
Yes. And you think that, and he's like, they have the whole thing about like, oh, fuck our dads. They're both bad people.
They kind of connect a little more.
Although William is not it's like a daddy issues connection.
Chloe hates her stepfather.
And
hates her father. There's father issues.
And then there's a scene, and again, this also comes back to this general problem of this is not it doesn't know how to take itself seriously.
As unnecessary scenes.
So they do this thing where where Rachel's burning the picture of her father.
She used the sentimental,
this like treasured picture. And so the she burns it over a garbage can, and then
in a fit of uncharacteristic rage.
And then again, but almost worked.
Almost worked.
You get that it's it's devastating for her, and then the garbage can combusts.
Like a lot more than the picture would have.
Yeah, and then she kicks it, and then the entire forest just boom.
The entire tree.
The tree. Yeah, it's true. The tree combusts,
and then
suddenly
she calls upon the mighty power of Zeus.
She screams, and then giant wind starts a forest fire.
And then I think I even saw Chloe go, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
they were having a nice moment just watching her past and her treasured moments go away.
We're like, what the fuck is going on
and
right
she
now?
just screams again, Bloody Mary, calling upon more wind to make the fire bigger.
And we're like, what the fuck is going on?
I just started laughing. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then it starts the whole thing that Life is Strange sometimes does, where it goes to each character, sub-character, watching this apocalyptic forest fire emerge with indie music going over it.
Yeah.
Because that's a happy scene.
Yeah. It was weird.
Smokey the Bear was pissed off that night. That's
yes, he was. So, final thoughts, final discussion. I mean, I think we are both genuinely surprised, like by how halfway decent it was.
I even said before, like, what if it turns out this is better or does better things than the first game? Because I thought that would be funny and like interesting.
Yeah, and like it legit might like, and so we in our final discussion when we first finished the game had talked about that this one has this, I had said, captured the idea that life is strange more than the first game.
Yeah.
Like the first game, it's like, holy shit, I can time travel.
I broke the space-time continuum. You know, normal everyday stuff.
Yeah.
That's sarcasm.
This one, like, it captures the fact that life is strange. It's unpredictable. Your father could die. Your
Fall in love. It's
like it's legitimately like.
It's not bizarre. It's strange.
Yeah, and I mean, is there really much else we need to cover? I mean, you and I discussed
symbolism,
that.
Really. The raven. There's a raven that always comes up. As
we're wondering what the symbolism is going to be. We like the fact that the deer is
back.
Still prevalent. We're trying to like discuss what we're trying to think of what the deer might be. I had said initially that like maybe it's like I said like maybe it's fate, or one of the things I said is maybe it's like the theoretical like overarching that Max is still looming in her mind.
Which I didn't really like because the deer was still watching Max in the first game.
Yeah.
So I think it was more, well, in the first game I think it was more nature.
Yeah. And in this one it might just be fate.
It might just be fate.
Sure. But I think overall, all in all, we both liked it. We both said if we were to review the episode as a whole on the 5-point scale, we both give it about a 3.
It's definitely my thoughts is like it's taking steps in the right direction aside from lacking a central conflict. Really, it's definitely doing things. I'm more invested in this story than the story of Max, I think.
Yeah, I mean I was invested in the story of Max, but I liked it too.
It did the impossible. Made Chloe somewhat more of a likable character.
I agree.
And Rachel was a brilliant character.
We agree.
And something I touched on was it showed how Rachel was the queen of the school, the perfect person. But then in that snap of like character change, which was uncomfortable, but it sort of made sense, I guess. It showed that
strange.
Yeah, not everyone's perfect.
Yeah.
She has problems. She has trust issues. She's a 3D character. Yeah. And it was brilliant how they fleshed that out.
Yes. We all agree, and I think that's going to be it on this video. Thank you guys for being patient.
Thank you for having me, by the way.
You're welcome. I hope you guys appreciated this collab. He's going to have at least 2 more videos with us. If you guys like him, we'll do more stuff.
Drop a like, comment, and subscribe on this video.
He's on Twitch with a bunch of our mutual friends.
House_of_memes, boy.
The link to that will be in the description down below. Thank you again for being patient. Special thanks goes to Amanda.
Thank you.
For putting this all together. That's gonna do it. All right, thanks guys
for watching.
Bye.